You know what they say about therapy, it's supposed to fix you, to heal the cracks and give you tools to handle life's messes. That's the sales pitch, at least. What they don't tell you is that sometimes, therapy doesn't fix your problems. Sometimes, it hands them a hammer. Take me, for example. I'm Bill, 38, proud owner of a sensible engineering job, a house in the suburbs, and what I thought was a perfectly ordinary marriage to my wife, Jessica. We'd been seeing a family therapist, Dr. Kevin, a man with kind eyes and just the right amount of salt and pepper hair, to strengthen our bond. Turns out, Kevin was a little too enthusiastic about bonding with Jessica. The day I found out started like any other. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping my morning coffee, while Jessica swanned around the house like the domestic goddess she pretended to be. She had that glow about her, the kind you'd expect after a spa day or maybe a compliment from your husband. Except I hadn't complimented her in weeks, oops. We've got a session with Dr. Kevin today, she chirped, pouring herself a smoothie. Don't forget. Oh, I'd never forget Kevin, I said, forcing a smile. He's practically family at this point. She laughed, not catching the edge in my voice. Later that day, while Jessica was out running errands, I was tidying up the living room when her laptop pinged. Normally, I wouldn't have given it a second thought, but curiosity is a funny thing, it sneaks up on you when you least expect it. I opened the laptop, and there it was, an email notification from none other than Dr. Kevin. Subject: can't stop thinking about you. Well, that's not exactly a normal therapist-patient subject line, is it? Against my better judgment, I clicked the email. What I read nearly made me spill my coffee. Jessica, last night was incredible. I can't wait until our next session. Bill is so oblivious. It's almost too easy. Almost too easy. I stared at the screen, my brain short-circuiting. Was this real? Did I accidentally stumble into a terrible soap opera? And most importantly, how the hell did I not see this coming? When Jessica came home, she acted like nothing was wrong. She kissed me on the cheek, made small talk about the weather, and sat down to scroll through her phone. I watched her, my coffee mug in hand, wondering how someone could lie so effortlessly. "How's your day?" she asked, not looking up. "Oh, you know," I said, my voice dripping with forced cheerfulness. "Just the usual. Work, emails, secrets." She froze for a split second before recovering. "Secrets?" "Yeah," I said, standing up and heading toward the kitchen. People can be so careless with them these days. Her laugh was nervous, but she didn't ask any more questions. That night, as she slept soundly beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I could have confronted her right then and there, but where's the fun in that? No, if Jessica and Kevin wanted to play games, I'd play too. Only my game was going to be a hell of a lot more interesting. So there I was, lying in bed, wide awake, plotting the destruction of my wife's perfect little charade. Let me tell you, nothing sharpens your focus quite like betrayal. Jessica and Kevin thought they were clever. They thought I was oblivious, just some harmless, bumbling husband too busy with spreadsheets and football to notice the circus act happening behind my back. Well, guess what? The clown just got serious. The next morning, Jessica was her usual cheery self, making waffles like a woman without a guilty conscience. "Don't forget, we have our session with Dr. Kevin this afternoon," she said, sliding a plate in front of me. "Oh, don't worry," I said, smothering my waffle in syrup. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." She smiled, completely unaware that I'd spent half the night setting up a keylogger on her laptop and forwarding her incriminating emails to my phone. That afternoon, as we sat in Dr. Kevin's office, I couldn't help but marvel at his audacity. He had this calm, professional demeanor, nodding thoughtfully as Jessica droned on about communication issues and feeling unappreciated. "And how does that make you feel, Bill?" Kevin asked, tilting his head like he genuinely cared. "Oh, you know," I said, leaning back in my chair. "Sometimes I feel like there's a third person in this marriage." Jessica stiffened, her eyes darting to me, then to Kevin. His expression didn't falter, but I caught the slight twitch in his jaw. "Interesting," Kevin said, scribbling something in his notebook. "Do you want to elaborate on that?" "Not yet," I said, smiling. "I think I need more time to process my feelings." After the session, I decided it was time to take things up a notch. I scheduled a one-on-one session with Kevin, pretending I needed help working through some personal issues. When I walked into his office a few days later, he greeted me with that same calm, professional smile, completely oblivious to the fact that I knew everything. "So, Bill," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "What's on your mind?" "Oh, lots of things," I said, settling into the chair. "Marriage, trust, honesty. You know, the usual." He nodded, scribbling in his notebook. "Those are important topics. How do you feel about your marriage right now?" "Funny you should ask," I said, crossing my legs. "I've been thinking a lot about open communication lately. You know, being honest with your partner, sharing everything, even the uncomfortable stuff." "That's a great mindset," Kevin said, smiling. "Yeah," I continued, my tone casual. "In fact, I was thinking we should normalize open relationships. You know, really embrace the idea of trust and freedom." Kevin blinked, clearly caught off guard. "That's an interesting perspective." "Oh, come on, Kevin," I said, leaning forward. "You're a progressive guy. You must see the benefits of a little flexibility in a relationship." For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "Well, every couple is different," he said carefully. "Exactly," I said, slapping my knee. "And you, of all people, would know that." As I left the session, I could practically feel the cracks forming in Kevin's calm facade. He had no idea I was playing him, and that made the game even sweeter. Jessica and Kevin thought they were in control, but little did they know, I was just getting started. The great thing about being underestimated is that people don't see you coming. Jessica and Kevin thought they were the masterminds, but in reality, they'd handed me the reins without even realizing it. The next step in my plan? Turn their smug little fantasy into a public disaster. And what better way to do that than with an anniversary party? At breakfast one morning, I casually slid the idea across the table. "You know, Jess," I said between bites of toast, "I've been thinking. Our anniversary is coming up. How about a big celebration? Friends, family, everyone who's supported us through the years." Jessica's eyes lit up, and for a second, I almost believed she still cared about our marriage. "That's a great idea, Bill. It's so thoughtful of you." "Oh, you know me," I said with a grin. "Always thinking about how to make you happy." She didn't catch the edge in my voice, too busy planning the details in her head. By the time she left for work, she was practically giddy, and I was mentally rehearsing my big reveal. The weeks leading up to the party were a flurry of activity. Jessica threw herself into the planning with gusto, oblivious to the fact that I'd secretly installed a hidden camera in Kevin's office. Every whispered sweet nothing, every secret rendezvous, every smug grin, it was all recorded, cataloged, and ready for prime time. Meanwhile, I played the part of the doting husband, helping with decorations, sending out invitations, and pretending I wasn't about to drop a nuclear bomb on her perfect little world. On the night of the party, the house was packed. Friends, family, colleagues, everyone Jessica and Kevin had ever tried to impress was there, sipping wine and marveling at how perfect our life seemed. Jessica looked stunning, of course, in a sleek black dress that made her the center of attention. Kevin arrived fashionably late, his suit immaculate, his smirk firmly in place. I greeted him at the door with a firm handshake and a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Kevin! So glad you could make it." "Wouldn't miss it," he said smoothly, his gaze darting to Jessica. "Good," I said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You're going to love the surprise we have planned." The party reached its peak about an hour in, with everyone mingling and toasting to love and commitment. That's when I decided it was time. I tapped a glass with a spoon, drawing everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice warm and confident. Thank you all for being here tonight. Jessica and I are so grateful to have such amazing friends and family supporting us. And to show our appreciation, we've put together a little video montage of our journey together. Jessica's smile faltered for a split second, and Kevin shifted uncomfortably. But they didn't say a word as I dimmed the lights and started the video. The montage began innocently enough: photos from our wedding, vacations, holidays. Laughter filled the room as our guests watched the carefully curated highlights of our life. But then, the tone shifted. The screen flickered, and suddenly, there was Kevin's office. Jessica and Kevin appeared, their voices hushed but unmistakable. "Bill will never know," Jessica said, laughing softly. Kevin leaned closer, smirking. "It's almost too easy." The room went silent. Gasps filled the air as the footage played on, showing every damning interaction between the two of them. Jessica's face turned ghostly pale, and Kevin looked like he'd just been hit by a truck. When the video ended, I stepped forward, my expression calm but my voice sharp. "Well," I said, breaking the silence, "I think that about sums up the last year of our marriage, don't you?" Jessica stammered, her voice shaking. "Bill, I can explain." "Oh, please," I said, cutting her off. "Save it. I think everyone here has seen enough." I turned to Kevin, whose usual confidence had evaporated. "And you, Kevin, thank you for your professional insights. I'll be sure to leave you a glowing Yelp review." The room erupted in whispers, guests exchanging shocked glances. Jessica and Kevin were too stunned to speak, and I reveled in the chaos for a moment before delivering the final blow. "Oh, and one more thing," I said, pulling an envelope from my pocket. "I've sold the house, finalized the divorce papers, and taken full ownership of the car. You'll find the keys on the counter, Jess. Consider it my parting gift." With that, I raised my glass, toasting to my freedom. Here's to new beginnings. As I walked out the door to a round of stunned applause, I couldn't help but smile. Jessica and Kevin had played their game well, but in the end, I was the one who wrote the rules. You know that feeling you get when a roller coaster reaches the top and starts plummeting? That was the room after my little presentation. Silence. Shock. The occasional gasp from someone who clearly hadn't seen enough soap operas to expect the twist. Jessica and Kevin were frozen, caught in the headlights of their own train wreck. I stood there for a moment, soaking it all in, before grabbing my jacket and heading for the door. "Bill, wait!" Jessica called, her voice trembling. I turned slowly, arching an eyebrow. "Wait for what? More lies? Another therapy session?" She stumbled over her words, desperation written all over her face. "It's not what it looks like." I laughed, short, bitter, and loud enough to make a few guests jump. "Oh, it's exactly what it looks like, Jessica. You two just didn't think you'd get caught." Kevin, ever the picture of professionalism, finally found his voice. "Bill, I think we should sit down and talk this through like adults." "Adults?" I repeated, taking a step closer. "You mean the way adults sneak around behind their friends' back? Or maybe the way adults use their therapist's couch for activities that aren't covered by insurance?" The crowd of guests started to murmur, their whispers like a symphony of judgment. Kevin shifted uncomfortably, his usual smugness replaced by a mix of panic and embarrassment. Jessica tried again, reaching for me. "Bill, please, we can fix this." "Fix this?" I interrupted, my voice rising. "You don't fix something by setting it on fire, Jessica. And you don't strengthen your marriage by cozying up to the guy who's supposed to help us." Her hand dropped, and for a split second, I saw it, the realization that she'd lost. I turned back to the crowd, addressing them like a man giving a victory speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. I know this wasn't the show you were expecting, but hey, life's full of surprises." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room. And to Jessica and Kevin, I continued, raising an imaginary glass, "Congratulations. You've given me clarity. And freedom." With that, I walked out, leaving them to clean up the mess they'd made. Outside, I leaned against the car, my car now, thanks to a solid prenup and some quick legal work, and took a deep breath. For the first time in months, I felt lighter. By the next morning, the fallout was in full swing. Social media lit up with vague but unmistakable posts from the guests. Sometimes the truth comes out in the most dramatic way. Last night's party was unforgettable. #awkward. Kevin's practice took a hit almost immediately. Word spread like wildfire, and within days, he'd lost several clients, including a few mutual friends. Jessica, on the other hand, tried damage control. She called. She texted. She even showed up at my office, tearfully begging for a second chance. "Bill," she said, standing in the doorway of my office. "We can fix this. I made a mistake, but I love you." I looked at her, my expression calm but firm. "Jessica, the time to fix this was before you sent those emails. Before you lied. Before you destroyed everything we had." She started crying, but it didn't move me. "You chose this, Jessica," I said quietly. "Now you have to live with it." With that, I turned back to my work, signaling the end of our conversation and our marriage. By the end of the week, I had the house sold, the car transferred to my name, and tickets booked for a solo trip around the world. Jessica and Kevin could have their drama. I was done with it. There's a strange satisfaction in watching things fall apart, when it's not your life, of course. For me, the days following the party felt like tying the final knots on a ship I was about to set adrift. Jessica and Kevin were reeling, their perfect little worlds cracking under the weight of their own arrogance. I, on the other hand, was ready to move on. Jessica tried one last time to salvage what was left. She showed up at the closing for the house sale, her face a mask of contrition. "Bill," she said, catching me as I walked to my car. "Can't we talk about this? Really talk?" I turned to her, tilting my head. "Jessica, we've talked plenty. Remember? Those therapy sessions you were so excited about? Oh, wait, you were too busy cozying up to Kevin to actually focus on fixing anything." Her lip quivered, but I wasn't falling for the performance this time. "Listen," I continued, leaning casually against the car, "I don't hate you. That would take too much energy. But I don't love you, either. Not anymore. And honestly, I think you stopped loving me a long time ago, too." She opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand. "Save it," I said. "This is goodbye, Jessica. I'm done." Later that day, I handed over the keys to the house, feeling an odd sense of closure as I watched the new owners walk through the front door. It was strange, seeing the place I'd called home for years become just another transaction. But it felt right. I spent the evening packing the last of my things, including the paperwork for my upcoming trip. A one-way ticket to freedom, or as the travel agency called it, a round-the-world journey. Same difference. The night before I left, I had one final loose end to tie up. Kevin. I stopped by his office, walking in unannounced. The receptionist looked flustered but didn't dare stop me. Kevin was sitting at his desk, staring blankly at his computer. He looked up when I entered, his expression shifting from surprise to unease. "Bill," he said, standing. "I didn't expect to see you." "Oh, don't worry," I said, closing the door behind me. "This won't take long." He gestured to the chair, but I stayed standing. "I just wanted to say thank you," I said, my tone light but cold. "For what?" he asked, frowning. "For reminding me what I'm worth," I said. "Because it sure as hell isn't this mess you and Jessica created." Kevin's face reddened, but he didn't respond. "Oh, and one more thing," I added, pulling a manila envelope from my bag. "Inside, you'll find everything your board needs to know about your extracurricular activities. Consider it my parting gift." I dropped the envelope on his desk and turned to leave. "Bill, wait," Kevin called, his voice panicked. I didn't. The next morning, I boarded my flight, a weight lifting off my shoulders as the plane took off. Jessica and Kevin could sort out their wreckage. I was done with them, done with the lies, and done with the drama. For the first time in years, my life was mine again. As the plane soared above the clouds, I looked out the window and felt something I hadn't in a long time: peace. The chaos, the lies, the betrayal, it was all behind me now, left in the dust of a house I no longer owned and a life I no longer wanted. Jessica and Kevin could stew in the ruins of their choices. I had a fresh start ahead of me. The first stop on my journey was Paris. Cliché, maybe, but there's something poetic about walking along the Seine, knowing you've just set fire to the worst parts of your past. I spent my days wandering, tasting new foods, meeting strangers who didn't know my story. And for the first time in years, I wasn't defined by what I'd lost, I was defined by what I was finding. One night, as I sat in a quiet cafe, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a mutual friend back home. Heard about Kevin's board meeting. Guess your little gift worked. His practice is officially done. I smiled, sipping my wine. Justice, it seemed, had a way of catching up. Jessica's name didn't come up again, not in texts, not in thoughts. She was a chapter I'd finished reading, and I wasn't looking back. The journey continued. Rome, Tokyo, Sydney, the world stretched out before me, full of possibilities. Along the way, I met people who reminded me that trust wasn't a weakness, that love didn't have to be a battlefield. By the time my plane touched back on U.S. soil months later, I was a different man. Stronger. Wiser. And most importantly, free. The final scene of this story isn't dramatic. It's not me driving off into the sunset or confronting Jessica one last time. It's just me, standing in my new apartment, unpacking a life I'd rebuilt piece by piece. No lies. No secrets. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd won, not by getting even, but by moving on. Subscribe to never miss a new story and discover even more captivating tales.